Hey everybody, this is Perch, talking YA strategy. But trust me, I promise I'll make this interesting for you, even if you have no interest in YA. I believe this is true, and I may be wrong. But this is my an opinion of one. But I think that oftentimes there's a trap that the comic publishers get into that starts out logically. I mean, like the right steps are being taken, but then it takes a left turn, and I don't think they really realize they're doing it. But YA kids books is a good example of this. So if you look at the broader comics industry, when I say broader, I mean including YA, including manga, including all that kind of stuff, then what you find is there's a couple people who are killing it right now. And in particular, Raina Telgemeier, who I've talked about before, and Dab Pilkey. There's some stats on Dab Pilkey which will blow your mind of the amount of units that Pilkey is moving on a regular basis. Looking up this Amazon sales tool, like it's in a different orbit. Like you take the highest selling comic graphic novel through Amazon, whatever the biggest one, your biggest seller, like your Watchmen, and then you compare it up against like the latest book from Dav Pilkey. Not the latest, but one that's been on the market for a year. Actually, the longer in the market, the better. And you look at the units that are moved month by month. The strongest selling traditional Western comic graphic novel is, I think, 1/25th or more than that. I think it's close to 1/100th of what Pilkey is moving. It's like not even close. It's a like I'm going to present this picture with like the graphic, and the bar will be so high up you won't be able to see what the comic industry is doing. It's just it you look at it, it's just like I yikes. Data doesn't lie. At any rate, the people inside the Marvel and DC kind of business units, they will look at this and say, "Hey, there's this growing market for YA," and they're correct. There is. They'll say, "Hey, Scholastic is starting to make some inroads with these things that are kind of like comics. They're not exactly like comics, but they feel kind of like it. They're graphic novels. It's a sequential art, and they're getting some strong traction on this. A couple of people who are really doing very, very well." And the comic, the publishers of Marvel, somebody will go. I'm imagining this conversation goes this way. I may not. We'll say something along the lines of, "Well, okay, let's get Dav Pilkey to do a book for us because this is a name that who's our top sellers. Okay, it's this Dav Pilkey guy. Let's have Dav Pilkey do a Marvel book for us." And then somebody like maybe they go away and they come back and they're like, "All right, well, Pilkey's going to want $25 million and 25% of all the take." It's like, all right, we'll scrap the Dav Pilkey plan. That's not going to work. Okay, who do we then? So they say, who do we have somewhere in the business who can write like Dav Pilkey? And they're right there. It's that exact moment. Now everything's following some logical paths. It's like, okay, we recognize there's a market need. Okay, we know who the leaders in the market are. Can we get them? No. All right. We still want to play in this market. Yes, we cannot ignore the market. So let's find somebody inside our current operation who we can afford, or who's there. Or sometimes it takes a different path. It's like, let's find somebody. Like, does anybody have any connections inside of YA? Of somebody that we can afford. And right there, you've moved from a thoughtful business strategy to a copy and clone business strategy. You're no longer trying to really succeed in the market because you've taken 2 steps away from the customer. Let me back that up and explain what I mean. The customer are kids. It's YA or it's kids. Yes, it's true. There may be some 40, 50-year-old, man or woman who also likes reading Dav Pilkey. It's fine. I'm not one of those. I think I'm impressed with Pilkey for how much money how much he dominates the market. My daughter has desperately tried to get me to read Dogman, and I'm like, yeah, it's this. I can't do it. It's charming. I get why it's popular. This is not something I enjoy, but that's okay. I don't need to enjoy it. At any rate, And no, before people come in, no, that's not me saying some things aren't made for me. That is me saying it for myself, which makes complete sense. You can always say this isn't for me. I don't need other people telling me what is and isn't for me. I can explain. I'm a grown adult, so I can make those decisions for myself. But at any rate, it's your market are kids. They're young adults, and those are the people who are going to be reading and consuming your books. And so whatever you make, it has to land with them. But the second you move away from a strategy of, hey, we should be a part of this. Hey, we should work with the top selling people, but we can't afford it. I know what's the biggest substitute that kind of feels like the people we can't afford. As soon as you do that, now your goal is to try and replicate or clone somebody else in this business, not meet the needs of the actual target market. Because here's the big secret. I feel pretty confident that Pilkey is regularly, assessing his market and reacting accordingly with the comics and the things that he makes. I know Raina Telgemeier does this because Telgemeier shows up at like I don't know if it was virtual, I don't recall now, but basically was at a comic convention getting an award. Years past when she deserved the award, by the way, but anyway, she gets the award and she notes that she is always studying and learning about her target market. She's always trying to figure out what it is that they want. And the interviewer or the panelist, somebody said, "How do you do that?" And she kind of laughs. It's like, I talk to kids. It's like I I go ask them what they like, and then there's laughter in the room. But the real laughter is that when you heard other people, they talk about, well, I'm leaning back on experiences I had as a kid. I'm remembering the things that I went through. There was once and it was not Mariko Tamaki, but it was one of the other people that DC had hired to do their one of the YA books. And they're like, well, where'd you get the inspiration for this? It's like, I found my old journals from when I was in junior high school, and I knew there was a story in there. And it's like, I'm listening to that. I'm like, this is parody, right? Because you're basically saying, I didn't look at the market. I didn't ask anybody what they wanted. I, I asked myself what the market wants, and then I delivered it. I represent the entire market, which clearly they don't, and the sales reflect that. But the second that you lose sight of your customer, you're lost. And again, I don't think that Marvel and DC, I don't think that these publishers are sitting around trying to figure out ways to screw it up. But as soon as you change your strategy from how do we find somebody who can kind of write in this business as good as other people were chasing, you're now chasing a successful author. You're not chasing your customer. You're not chasing the actual target of the work you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get a good quality result out of using that approach. It just means that your odds are much lower because you're taking a gamble in your audience. You're taking a gamble that somehow through this convoluted strategy, you're still going to wind up with something that your target market wants to read. And by the way, it doesn't end with I created a book for a YA market. You also then have to market it. You have to put it in a place where that market exists. There's a bunch of other steps that also get screwed up in this whole process. But it starts off so good. It starts off with, hey, there's money in those hills. We like money. Let's go get that money. And then it immediately devolves into how can we do this on the cheap? How can we get somebody who's already in our inner circle to kind of do this for us? And yeah, a lot of it does come down to economics. A lot of it does come down to who can we afford? Let's spend as little as possible to enter this highly competitive market against people who are making 50x the money we're making. Yeah, that's going to work out great. Not to harp on it, but maybe a little bit to harp on it. You can't lose track of your customer. You can't lose track of the person you're trying to sell to. And the person you're trying to sell to is not your buddy. It's not your friend. It's not your editor. It's not the shareholders in the company that you're working for. It's the person who's actually, at the end of the day, going to put dollars down on the table and buy your book. It's not even, and I know I talked about this in the other video, it's not even the comic shop. It is your customer. You got to know your customer. You've got to know who they are. You also can't invent a fantasy customer that you think exists and then market to that person. You have to be able to locate your customer. Do you realize, like in a lot of companies, there's this whole concept of product marketing and product analysis and competitive analysis. There's a whole function. People are hired and fired based on their ability to do that well. It's kind of a key job. But in many cases, in the comic industry, that job is largely ignored. The idea of product marketing, the idea of, you know, basically making sure you understand your market, creating something for them, targeting them, and then launching a successful campaign for them. That's all kind of that's a mystery. A lot of the thought process involved in there goes back to, well, we've always done it this way, and kids like Deadpool. So what if we had Deadpool? Like, keep in mind, this people. I mean, no flame by what I'm about to say. But if your big idea for Deadpool is, hey, let's get Rob Liefeld to come in and draw a cover for Deadpool, then you have no ideas. Yes, Rob Liefeld created Deadpool. Yes, there's a market who would love to see Rob Liefeld drawing Deadpool. If that's all you've got in the tank, let's go find Rob Liefeld so he can do some more Deadpool for us. Yeah, you're firing blanks at that point. You'll sell some, sure, but you're not exactly changing the world. You're not breaking open new markets. You're basically on a path to diminishing returns. And that's why, where you can see it fully on display with the YA strategy, with the kid strategy, you see a lot of content being produced that bears no resemblance to the market that's actually going to buy it. And you get the expected results. Anyway, what do you think? Am I off base here? Let me know. Let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and thanks for listening.